I'd like to start off by acknowledging the traditional custodians of land that we meet on today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I'd like to acknowledge all the work that people like Marie and Pamela Kerr and Sue Bolton and the other organisers of today have put in to making today possible, and like to thank all of you refugee activists for speaking out on behalf of refugees. It's important that the message it comes across. We left Iran for political reasons, and Iranians continue to take a risk and risk their lives and the lives of their children to come to Australia in search of opportunity, in search of freedom, in search of certain principles that we take for granted here in Australia. Women in Iran are devalued. If a woman in Iran is convicted of committing adultery, she's buried up to her neck and she's stoned to death, and her body is discarded on the streets to deter others from committing crimes, so-called crimes. Men, on the other hand, are buried up to their waist and they're stoned as well, and if they have an opportunity to escape, then the conviction is quashed. Girls as young as 6 and 7 are sold to neighbouring Middle Eastern countries, and they're forced to work as prostitutes. Women, it's obvious that women would like to leave Iran so that their daughters can have access to a better life. They don't want their children to be subjected to inhumane practices. They don't want their daughters to be forced to run away and to be forced into prostitution to earn a living. We need to stop calling refugees illegals. The government needs to distance itself from that terminology, because that moves us from the fact that they are people. Refugees are people. We need to see them as people, and we need to welcome them to Australia with open arms, because they have committed no crime. They want to come to Australia in search of opportunity, in search of a better life, and we should not deny them that opportunity. Instead of meeting with the religious dictators of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Australian government needs to open its heart and its minds and accept refugees wholeheartedly, not talk to the people that the refugees are fleeing from. If they're sent back, they will face persecution. You can't send someone back to be victimised further. They should not be sent back to where they've fled from, because the hands of the Islamic Republic, the hands of Khomeini and the other members of that institution are stained with the blood of the Iranian people. They're stained with the blood of women and children. They're stained with the blood of union activists. Their hands are stained with the blood of their hands are stained with the blood of students who participated in the uprisings after the fraudulent presidential elections. The people of Iran deserve to be able to participate in free and open elections, not to be told what the outcome of the election is 2 weeks before the election itself. The Iranian Women's Association is also concerned about the over 3,000 Iranian refugees considered to be protected persons under Article 27 of the 4th Geneva Convention, who are currently situated at Camp Liberty. Camp Liberty is a camp which is inside Iraq. They were attacked by the Iraqi forces at the behest of the Iranian regime. The Iraqi forces and the Iranian regime orchestrated a massacre on the 1st of September, which led to the murder of 52 Iranian refugees. And it led to the abduction of 7. Those 7 hostages are being held in a prison behind Prime Minister al-Maliki's office, and they've been on hunger strike since the 1st of September this year. We're very afraid of what may happen next. We're afraid of further attacks. We're afraid of these refugees being sent back to Iran, because they will face torture. They will be executed in public in order to deter other Iranians from speaking out against the Islamic dictatorship. So we need to do what we can to ensure that these hostages are released, and do what we can to ensure that the United Nations sends its blue helmet peacekeeping troops to Camp Ashraf to protect these refugees from further attacks. The Iraqi government's hands are stained with the blood of the Iranian people. The Iranian government's hands are stained with the blood of the Iranian people as well. And instead of turning our backs on the Iranian refugees, whether they be in Iraq or whether they be in Australia or whether they be on boats on their journey to Australia, we need to welcome them with open arms. Australia was built on migration, and that's what it's always going to be. On one hand, the Australian government acknowledges that Iran is not a safe place to be and refuses and rejects the applications of Iranians who want to come here on tourist visas just to visit Australia, and says, no, if you come here, you're going to overstay your visa because we know that you're not going to go back. Because on one hand, they acknowledge that there's nothing for them to go back to. There's nothing for them to go back to, and they should be allowed the opportunity to access things that we're able to access and things that we take for granted every day. And what we also need to acknowledge is that they're escaping from a tyrannical regime. Okay, sorry about that. I also wanted to add that it's unjust and embarrassing that refugees who are here now are in limbo. They don't know what their fate is. They don't have access to education. They don't have access to certain entitlements that we have access to. So that's very shameful, and it puts people in limbo. They're very distressed, and they've risked their lives. They've made it over to Australia. They've been locked up. They've been subject to various psychological issues while in detention, and now that they're released, they're living in limbo. So the pain and suffering does not end for refugees. So we need to adopt a more humane approach, and we need to distance ourselves from the terminology that the current government is using, and we need to recognise that refugees are people and they want a better life. That's all it is to it. So again, I'd like to thank the organisers of this rally, and I'd like to thank Dave Kerrin and members of the union movement and various senators and members of parliament who have made representations in relation to the 1st of September massacre. And again, I'd like to reiterate that we would really appreciate your support in relation to the in relation to putting pressure on the Australian government to put pressure on the Iraqi government to release these 7 hostages. Thank you very much.